Hello, and welcome to the Mission Strong podcast. My name is John Jagsney. I'm your co-host, and I'm bringing you a conversation with our host, Justin Yee, and a very special guest. His name is Dr. Drew Morcos. He's a very talented physical therapist based out of Orange County, California. Justin does a great job introducing him, his accomplishments, and what he does, so I will let him hammer out the very fine details. So, without further ado, here is the conversation between Justin Yee and Dr. Drew Morcos.
All right, welcome to the Mission Strong podcast. This is episode number 2. I'm your host, Justin Yee. Today I have on with me Dr. Drew Morcos. Drew is a doctor of physical therapy and the founder of MODIS, a functional movement approach to clinical rehabilitation for amateur and professional athletes. Prior to opening his own practice, he was a director of rehabilitation for the University of Southern California Athletic Medicine Department for 5 years. He continues to serve as an adjunct instructor of clinical physical therapy for the Division of Biokinesiology and Physical Therapy at the Herman Ostrow School of Dentistry at USC. He earned his BS in kinesiology with an emphasis in athletic training from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He received his Doctor of Physical Therapy degree from USC, followed by completion of a residency in orthopedics and a fellowship in sports physical therapy through Kaiser Permanente, Los Angeles. He has experience as an athletic trainer and physical therapist in Division I athletics, NFL, NBA, USA Indoor Volleyball, USA AVP Beach Volleyball, and the World's Strongest Man competition. He's on the board of Context Experts to design item questions for the Sports Clinical Specialist exam. He's also a clinical instructor for the Kaiser Permanente Sports Fellowship Program and Azusa Pacific University Physical Therapy Department. He was the primary clinical instructor for the USC Division I Sports Fellowship Program, one of only 3 programs in the nation. Drew, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's quite a wrap, man.
Yeah.
Awesome job. And that's kind of where it brings us to why we want Dr. Drew on this episode today, because we met through the OC Surf Soccer Club, kind of what you're doing for them, some of the ACL prevention stuff for the girls side. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of their teams from a strength and conditioning side, and so we a lot of our methodology we learned tonight because we were just running through some girls soccer teams through your ACL prevention program, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And so let's go into this, man. We just finished that up. Can you explain the importance of why you have an ACL prevention course and and even maybe some history of how you got hooked up with the OC Surf Soccer Club?
Yeah, so I have a huge passion for athletics and the idea of, injuries in the sense of can we, try to decrease that likelihood. One of the big things is, as a physical therapist, we're always known as the people to rehab after an injury. And, it's always like they come to us after something has happened. And ACL is one of the biggest ones. And so one of my passions has always been the prehab side. Like, can we try to decrease that likelihood of having the ACL? So this was a passion of mine when I was at USC, like you mentioned. We really focused a lot on decreasing that likelihood of an ACL tear within our women's soccer program, women's lacrosse program, women's basketball program. So I kind of had a huge passion for that from that setting, which we did a really good job in the sense of
So when you say huge passion, were you guys seeing a lot of injuries at USC?
Yeah, so I came in there 2010, and there was a significant amount of ACL injuries, and the coaches really wanted to figure out a way that we could change that. So
let's go into that real quick. So ACL injuries, right? I think a lot of anybody that knows female athletes knows that that's pretty common, right? Mm-hmm. So and we have a non-contact version of it oftentimes, and then you have a contact version, right? So we're talking more today about the non-contact.
The non-contact,
ones, right?
The ones where no one is around and they're just trying to make a simple cut, and they hear a pop in their knee, and everyone kind of has their idea of why the ACL tears and why that happens. I think the biggest concern when you're looking at the source of the problem has always been, what's truly causing that ACL to tear. Because if you think about the knee itself, the knee, all it does is flex and extend in one direction. It goes back and forth. And one of the things that I mention to parents all the time is think of the knee as the middle child. You know, typically it's an issue with the hip, or typically it's an issue with the ankle. So it's the older sibling or the younger sibling. But who always gets the blame? The middle child.
Always.
And that's where the knee injury comes in. So the knee gets hurt, it's the middle child, but it was either the ankles problem or a hip problem mobility-wise. So when you look back at like when we at USC we had 21 Division I sports, so there's a lot of research that I was doing clinically, and when we look back at these ACL non-contact injuries, we're looking at like, okay, well, why did this thing tear in the first place? We look at their ankle mobility, super stiff ankle mobility, hip internal rotation, very, very limited. So when we kind of combine all of those things together.
Did you say internal rotation?
Typically.
Yeah, so that would make sense, right? Soccer players do a lot of external rotation.
Exactly.
But very little internal.
Most sports don't do internal.
And then ankle, so I'm thinking, I played a little bit of soccer, right?
Yeah.
And so some of that ankle flexibility comes from all those ankle sprains kind of early on, maybe, right?
Right.
So
and
you've
not
got
rehabbing it correctly.
Yeah, you've got a number of issues I think you were addressing, and that's why I liked what I saw tonight was, we weren't, sometimes it's always about the knee, like you said, but the focus is either upstream or downstream.
Yeah.
I like to say that. And so, that ankle strength and stability and that type of stuff. So neat. So you saw those kind of deficiencies across sports.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting to kind of find the reason of why, because, anyone can rehab an ACL after it's injured and surgically repaired, but if you don't figure out the source of that problem, who's to say that it's not going to re-tear, or who's to say that there's not going to be an injury on the other side? So, that was one of the big passions. Obviously, a prevention program is always important to implement, which is what we did today, and it's the same thing that I implemented back, 9 years ago, and now it's just even gotten better, with a lot of the research out there. So what we're doing now is even better what I was doing before, and back then we had about a 50% reduction in tears off of this program. So, it's something that's definitely has been proven, has shown great success, so it's really just a matter of consistency and discipline with it, and that comes from the athletic trainer, that comes from the coach, that comes from administration. So all of these people kind of have to be on board with what the goals are, because again, you're talking about a soccer athlete who has a long career ahead of them, and talking to multiple coaches, once you have an ACL tear and a reconstruction, that athlete is never the same. And we know that.
Yeah, and I agree.
Experience.
I think when you say passion, I want to go into that, because I think for me, my passion of working with athletes for this prevention stuff as well is having seen those athletes go through those catastrophic kind of knee injuries and not be able to come back, right? And it wasn't, and then that's a snowball effect on them as a human being, right? Seeing players basically their careers done,
Right.
I think I got real good insight into that, or unfortunately, when I was in college, seeing some of my friends go through that, and fortunately I didn't have it, but man, there were so many levels. It was so hard for them, right? The rehab was really long, like you said, like a year, and if they're lucky to come back and be the same, I never saw it either, right? I never saw them come back and be the same, because emotionally it was hard. So anytime they started to feel any kind of discomfort in the knee, they'd panic mode, right? So we see that a lot, and then you see players that have to withdraw from the sport, right? And they lose that camaraderie with their teammates, especially at the collegiate level.
Right.
Those a lot of those players, they live together, they eat together, they go to, a lot of their classes go in line, and then all of a sudden you're not part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's a hard hurdle
psychologically.
for our athletes. And so I think hopefully maybe, if we have some parents listening to this, is why would we want to do that? Not just from the physical side of being able to perform in the sport, but because of what injuries could possibly do to them psychologically, and maybe having a plan for that. That's probably a whole nother episode, right? Of having that a little bit of a plan for when the sport's over, and that type of stuff. Putting the emphasis on today, but making sure that they're prepped for what they're going to do afterwards, right? Because
right.
that's going into that. Like, what sports did you play growing up?
Yeah, I played basketball. I still play basketball now to this day, and again, I, knock on wood, been fortunate, no major injuries. But yeah, it's something where, growing up, I, wanted to be at the professional level like everyone else, right? But then realized quickly that I wasn't going to make it to that level. And so that's when I realized, like, hey, what's the next best thing in athletics besides playing? And to me, it was more on the, the medical side, being that first guy to run out on the field when someone gets hurt. That's when I went to athletic training and kind of did that. And that's when I started really exposing myself to a lot of the guys that were getting hurt, guys and girls that were getting hurt. And that's what I did in undergrad. And I use that as a driver for me to kind of get better, because once you put your mind on doing something, you want to be the best at it. And so that's why I have all these letters. I have alphabet soup behind my name for all these different credentials, because I felt like I needed to continue to learn and do more and more stuff. And so
Which is awesome, by the way, because I think that's most of our drive, right? Same thing with me. I wanted to be an athlete,
right.
and then learned relatively young, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Still kind of aspired, but relatively young, that there's probably not a chance I was going to make it.
Right.
I'm a towering 5'6", and so any sport, I was going to be automatically, coaches were looking at that
right.
guy's just amazing,
right?
Stature, but
yeah, you got it.
But then I'm a little bit jealous of you, because we have the same bachelor's degree in kinesiology, but I barely got through. Right. So I got weeded out. OChem, right? OChem weeded me out. And it was like, well, okay, like for me, at least my passion was similar. And this is the neat part, because I'm jealous of the letters sometimes, but fortunately, like for me, my niche is, or what I like to do is coach.
Sure.
So this was kind of that neat combination for us tonight,
right.
I think, to see that, right? Because
right.
you bring a level of expertise that I learn a lot from.
Sure.
And then, my upbringing too, I got access to be able to coach and help people at an early
right.
age. So growing up, so I always knew that's what I wanted to do.
Sure, that's perfect.
And so it's kind of a cool balance that we're seeing nowadays, I think, with, strength and conditioning coaches like me being
right.
good buddies with the PTs,
sure,
right? Instead of at each other's throats of like,
right.
stop hurting them, and like,
exactly.
let's just work together and get through that.
One-stop
very
shop.
neat. Yeah, one-stop shop, right? We've been kind of chatting about that, kind of seeing what we can bring together, especially for these aspiring young athletes, and even parents, right? Because I think, why would we want to? I kind of was saying this earlier, right? Because we want to get them through their athletic experience without catastrophic injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those are unavoidable. You play a sport like soccer, and you could get a tackle, and it could be it's just the nature of the
sure.
What we risk doing for the thrill,
sport, yeah.
right? But man, you're looking at most kids are done sports. If they go really competitive, they're still done when they're 22, 23.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are they gonna be able to move their bodies?
Right.
Is
it worth long term?
Yeah, because I really want to be active. We were chatting about your kids earlier. You got a couple of young ones and one on the way. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But we want to be running around with them when they're playing sports,
exactly.
right? We don't want to be holed up on the sideline, not moving.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
That's what keeps me working out, because I got a 15-year-old boy right now that wants
active.
a shot at the title.
Yeah.
So I got to stay fit.
Go after it. Yeah.
We were talking a little bit earlier before about. And I got to see this when I visited you at your clinic. You're going through this dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, these kind of posture positions, and you were working with a high-level NFL athlete I was watching. And it was really interesting, because I'm a proponent of those movements as well. I'm not as well-versed from it, but
sure.
I understand their importance. And I was surprised watching him of how much he was struggling.
Sure.
Which brings us into this topic, right,
Yeah.
of a lot of our audience hopefully are parents of aspiring athletes, right? It's like, okay, he performs well in the field. Like, he's making millions of dollars, right, doing what he does. But he's got some deficiencies, right? So it's this idea that just because you're performing on the field doesn't mean there's not things that you can't work on and fix, right?
Totally.
So
yeah, totally.
Maybe tell us about that.
That's kind of the biggest misconceptions of elite athletes, is everyone thinks that they're 100% strong, and no one can break them, and it's really interesting to really, when you dive in deeper and really assess their strength, in terms of functionality, they're pretty weak.
Yeah.
And, it's a function of two things though. It's a function of how their brain coordinates movement, and then it's a function of can they turn on that muscle when needed. And so they may be strong like on a bench press or a squat, but then you ask them to single leg squat off of a bench and their knee completely collapses in, because that's not what normal is for them. And that's not what they've trained since high school. And so dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, what that really essentially is really adding the component of a baby in the first year of life. So the logic and the theory behind it, which is not really a theory, is what we know naturally in terms of development, is that every month is a different milestone for a baby, starting at pretty much 3 months. 3 months to 12 months is a new milestone. And for the parents out there that have kids or have young kids right now, we don't tell our kids how to move. We don't tell them how to lay on their back, to lay on their stomach, to go to crawling, to reach for a toy. All of that stuff is innate in our brain in a healthy baby. So what we're trying to do is just reactivate those same muscles. So trying to turn on, for an older adult who may have been suffering a lot of injuries, by applying these movement patterns to the adult, we're just kind of turning on that light switch in the back of our brain where these innate movement patterns are there. We're just trying to awaken them again. And once you awaken them and kind of turn on the right muscles and the right patterning, you're allowing them to start strengthening in ways that they haven't strengthened before. Because as a baby, when you look at a baby's relative weight, they're the strongest that they'll ever be. Because they can hold their legs up 90-90 and play with a toy for about 10 to 15 minutes. Where now we're using that same exercise as a dead bug.
And they can sit in the bottom of a squat for long time,
right?
And that's kind of an interesting point, right? Because sometimes we run in this idea that squatting is maybe bad,
right?
And so, or squatting low is bad. We shouldn't get our butt to our heels.
Sure.
But man, I remember my kids sitting in the middle of the hallway in the bottom of that squat.
Yeah,
right. And I'm half Chinese, so got my Chinese side sitting in the bottom of that squat, right? And falling asleep.
Yeah.
And then we look at a lot of the Asian cultures, or that area of the world has hardly any hip disease or knee disease, right? Because they're in that full range of motion a lot.
A long time.
So that's an interesting thing, right? When you talk about mobility and range of motion and getting back to basic movements, I like to incorporate a lot of those as well, as just trying to get back to that. Because it seems like what do? We put our kids in chairs, put shoes on their feet right away, right? And we kind of miss out on some of those basic movement patterns. We change them, right? Would you, maybe I tangent, but I see kids that seems like when they put shoes on their feet right away, they start to learn to move wrong.
Right. I think everything, in rehab right now, we do everything barefoot.
Yes, that's kind of why I thought about the shoe thing. I remember when I visited you, it was like, oh, they're all barefoot. It's like, I know why.
Yeah, we want to get those muscles in the feet. We want to see where the compensations are in their arch. Where are they collapsing? We're not going to see that in a shoe, because the shoe is so padded and it has that built-in arch that they may not always be wearing that shoe when something happens, or they may be wearing a different kind of cleat, or a different they might be barefoot when something happens. So we always want to train and rehab as natural as possible.
Yeah.
And kind of get all the muscles that we can to fire.
Just getting back to the basics.
Yeah. Basics is key. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's why I really fell in love with DNS, is because it is what it is. No one's making up a theory and saying, this is what you need to do and this is why you should do it. This is a baby. This is what they do. These are the milestones that every pediatric specialist will tell you is a milestone for every month. And now we're just using those. We're just breaking it down into pieces of components of exercise. And so it's really no scientific, anomaly, or, one person in 20 years ago just decided to make this up and now he's benefiting off of it. It's nothing like that. And I'm a big believer in don't reinvent the wheel and kind of go with what we know already.
So that brings me to a little question I asked you earlier. about kids and lifting weights, right? And I don't mean trying to, load up kids with barbells and, heavy dumbbells and that type of stuff. But it almost goes into this, and I think this is where my philosophy lies, is like, I think it's okay to put a little bit of weight in a kid's hand, even at a young age, right? Because I remember how cool it was. I'm reflecting on this now that we're talking about this DNS of handing a kid a bottle, baby, and they're holding up a 8 to 12 ounce bottle, and then they'll stand up with it, and then they'll squat with it. It's like, that's a front squat with weight, with a good amount of weight compared to their body weight. It's like, that's a decent amount of weight. And then I think about my daughter's backpack today. So my youngest daughter's 8, and we often their elementary school is just over a mile from the gym, right? So we come park here at the gym, and we hop on the bikes, and they ride to school. Nice. And this is a kind of a neat part too with kids these days, is like, when I was growing up, if you had to ride your bike to school, like, it's because your parents weren't cool enough, or they didn't have the time to drive you. Right now, it's like everybody's driven. They might be 300 yards from school, but like, let's drive them. And it's like, my kids, it's funny because they get on their bikes and everyone's like, that's so cool, you're riding the bike, right? So my 8-year-old daughter gets this biggest smile on her face because she gets to ride her bike to school. And that type of stuff. That's a cool conversation too. But I was lifting up her backpack today, and it was like, thing had to be 15, 20 pounds, because we have to send our kids to school with a water bottle now. Right? So like, how much does 20 ounces of water weigh? Plus a notebook and a book for an 8-year-old? Like, I think and so I don't want to go open up this can too much, but I think sometimes we get really worried. Parents get really worried, and rightfully so. Like, I don't want to put my kid in a situation where I believe they might get hurt. But I'd like to maybe help educate parents that, to look at it maybe from another lens, that it's pretty natural for even babies to be lifting up stuff. Right? From a squat position, from a full range motion. What are your thoughts?
I mean, there's a lot of different ways that I think, when you look outside of a weight room, that the kids are, lifting weights essentially, and whether it's their own body weight, and then there's external weight, like anyone doing any type of gymnastics, or they're just flipping around, that pressure from their shoulders to their arm to their core is like lifting weight, and it may
sometimes I think it's more sheer force, right? Of maybe coming off of
a rotation.
So you get a female gymnast doing uneven bars. Right? Big giant off the top, does like a backflip and then lands. They're landing on kind of a soft mat, but it seems like if we had a force plate underneath.
But not even. I mean, that's like professional. I'm talking about kids that are just doing flips like they were today in your gym.
Did you see that? Right? We had we had some, what are they? Maybe 10-year-old girls in here, and we. They started exploring, and that's the cool part. That's what I love doing in the gym, right? Is I don't put a lot of rules on them. Like, we have rings, so they start swinging. And all of a sudden you give them 5 minutes on their own, and they're setting up an obstacle course the way they used to, like the way we used to do it. Right.
And so like, that's all weight training.
Right.
It's just body weight. And so, there are, I know, concerns about people putting on, like, let's say any type of external weight, but you got to think like, they have a backpack. They have doing all of these flips and turns and all of these different things.
A couple bugs.
That really can do the same thing but something more controlled. Where you're not trying to do a cartwheel. Your arm is fixed onto the ground and your body's twisting over your shoulder joint.
And you got full body weight on your shoulder, mind you.
Right.
So what's probably a good weight for a 5-year-old doing a cartwheel? Probably 50, 60 pounds.
I mean, I think,
right? Full weight on the shoulder. Right, and now they're doing, I let my daughter run amok, and she's trying to do one arm, so not even two. One arm, and then she's swinging from the rings, and now she's swinging on one arm. It's like, okay, she's holding up 40 pounds on one arm.
So, I mean, it's all relative to like, what is good, what is safe. And
it's kind of a good perspective, though, when we realize we want our kids doing body weight stuff. Right? Because a lot of times I'll do parents meetings before we bring in a team and that type of stuff, because I want to be able to educate and just put things back into perspective. Because if I did this one time, I had a group, right? And it's like, I want to do a little test with everybody, like, who can do a pull-up, right? And all the parents like perked up because they wanted their kid to hopefully to be able to do a pull-up, right? Turns out most kids can't do pull-ups. But they get up there and hang, right? And a couple did pull-ups. And no complaints from the parents that I just put full body weight on their shoulders
Right.
and elbows.
Yeah.
Right. But then I bring out 5-pound dumbbells and want them to hold it in a front squat position. Then I want them to squat and hands go up of like, oh, is that safe?
Right.
You know, so it's kind of just interesting,
Yeah,
right? Because
mentality.
of this mentality, and that's why we're here, right? I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's bad. It's like if I heard like squatting was bad, then I wouldn't want my kid to squat.
Yeah.
You know, if I thought I heard it from a credible source.
Sure.
You know, what we're trying to do is realign people to kind of put things into perspective of like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense that we should maybe get our kids in gymnastics or facilities that are doing full range of motion stuff earlier. You know, because you're saying these movement patterns are natural. Like we innately do that to
Right.
survive. Like if we don't do that, we
Right.
won't survive. And so we do that, and as kids, we take them out of some of those things, or we're you know, I'll go into this because maybe you've seen this at a park, right? Parents are like all over kids when they're exploring the park because they don't want them to fall. It's like I have to teach kids now a lot of times like how to fall because they haven't been allowed to fall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I
Right,
know it
right.
sounds funny, but like
No, it's true.
I gotta
It's-
teach
everything's
kids how to
so
do a
protected,
somersault in
yeah.
the front roll because you know sometimes we're all over. you
Yeah,
know, and-
it's interesting. It's interesting that you bring up that point because a good friend of mine, also a strength and conditioning coach, Ryan Flaherty, he brought up a good point in like when someone's going into water polo, right? What is the parent's first step before they go into water polo?
Well, they better know how to swim, right?
Exactly. They better know how to swim, right? But then when we think about parents putting their kids into soccer, what do they do first?
They put a ball at their foot. I know.
Put a
I've
ball at their
coached.
foot.
I've coached all my kids at the you know the rec league level, and you know I was one of the few coaches you know with a 5-year-old team. You know I don't even bring balls out the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's
Parents
all
are
about
like, what are
running.
you doing?
We
I'm
got to
like,
we got to teach them how to run. We got to teach them how to cut. We got to teach them how to move
Yeah.
without the ball. But why is it any different than water polo?
No, and that brings up the sport specialization,
Yeah.
right? Of getting right to the sport,
Yeah,
and we forgot about the basics.
yeah,
You know, we kind of saw that tonight, right?
Yeah.
We saw a lot of athletes that, you know, are club level players, probably pretty good, and you know, we saw some flaws in the very basics of running and jumping. You know, that was one of the things that you were one of the drills we have to do is the jump and land, land 2 foot, land 1 foot, great drills. You know, what I was thinking from a girls soccer perspective, we've gotten away from headers. So when you said jump up and head the ball, like very few girls ever jump and head the ball.
yeah. And you could
It's
tell.
not even in their sport. You can tell
Yeah.
right away. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
they don't do that. But then that landing stuff, right? Because we've been so focused on all these things that most of our kids forgot how to jump. You know, our parks changed. They don't jump off the things that we used to just jump off right of. You know, and so that kind of goes, you know, to some of this prehab ideas where, you know, what are some of the best ways that we could help our kids be more, what is the right word? More broad in their abilities, maybe.
Sure, prepared for anything that comes their way.
There we go.
You know, like again, I think sports specialization is become a big problem, and you know there's muscle memory in everything that we do. So if they're only playing soccer, when that one movement pattern comes where it's not a soccer specific thing in a soccer game, that's when kids usually get hurt.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they don't know how to move around. Like basketball is a totally different kind of cutting drill than soccer would be. Tennis.
I loved having
Yeah.
basketball players come out and play soccer.
Right.
So much better because those confined courts, much smaller, balls in the hands, moving quicker, right? So
Yeah.
they're cutting faster, and then they get on a big soccer field. It's like slow motion.
Exactly. And that's
You know?
where the best athletes, when you look at the best athletes, Ronaldo, all of those guys, they didn't play soccer right away.
Right, right.
They all played other sports and they all became really successful doing other things. And then, you know, they honed in on one as they knew like they got better at it. And I think parents think their kid's going to be the next, you know, Michael Jordan or, you know.
And that brings up, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, right? Because I feel the pressure as a parent. Like if my kid's not playing a high level, you know, on a competitive team at 10 years old, that they're never going to make it, right? And it's like, I'd like to get some of the athletes you're working on and, you know, in the NFL and that type of stuff. Because think about football.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys, Bo Jackson, you know, watched his 30 for 30, right? He didn't pick up football until he played high school.
Right. Same with Michael
You know,
Jordan.
like
didn't,
most of those
didn't
guys
play
like,
basketball.
Didn't play Michael Jordan get cut from his basketball team. Like
freshman year,
it's not like he made the fresh soft basketball team.
Yeah.
He got cut. Like didn't make any program.
Right.
You know, and some of our parents get upset if their kid doesn't make varsity as a freshman. It's like, hey, Michael Jordan didn't make fresh soft.
Right.
You know, it's like, wow. I think that's accurate, right? He got cut from the high school team. Didn't make any team. Yeah. So, and that's the thing too that I try to like, I have this. I call it the World Series, Little League World Series dilemma. Mm-hmm. You put a kid on the biggest stage at 12 years old, right? It's like, what are they going to accomplish after that?
Yeah, right.
You know, and they haven't even hit puberty yet.
Yep.
You know, but they've already tasted this, and then they start to struggle, right? Because
Right.
we see. I was thinking about that tonight. We had 8th grade girls in here, right? Their bodies are about to maybe go through some big changes,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So the importance of the basics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even if we're covering squats today, trying to teach them how to squat better, most of them are gonna have to teach them how to squat like every few months for the next 3 or 4 years,
Right.
as their bodies change and that
Right.
type of stuff. So why we should do the basics, maybe why we should take the approach of getting our kids in lots of different sports.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's even going back to what you were saying, the basic patterning. Like if you can't do a squat, then how do you expect the kid to land 2 feet? Because they have to land in a squat mechanic, right?
Right.
So if they can't even squat on their own without any external, distraction, then what's going to happen when they're, landing from jumping, having fun with their friends and jumping off a box?
Yeah.
What's their mechanics happening there? Like we have to, at some point, train them in those things. And whether it's the parents training them, whether it's coming to your gym, whether it's seeing a movement specialist, whether it's seeing a coach, whatever it is, they have to get it somewhere.
Yeah.
And like even right now, like maybe it's just the nature of who I am, but my kids, like every time they jump off of something, it's kind of like, okay, your knees went in. And this is my 5-year-old daughter.
Yep.
And she's like, she doesn't understand it at first, but then she gets it.
But it becomes a game. So I've gamified it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you lose points.
Yeah, you fell down, you used your hands. Yeah, you jumped off you jumped off the couch, but you fell on your knees.
Yeah.
What's the point of that, Land softly, land like a cat,
Right.
We don't have pets, but they've seen what cats do.
Yeah,
and
people
they
ask me
stick
why
it.
I don't have pets. It's like I got 5 kids.
Yeah,
I don't need pets.
Exactly. But that's the kind of idea is like, let your kids kind of move around, jump around, explore their body a little bit, and then kind of figure it out from there. Like, obviously, you don't want them to start training the wrong way, but, if you're aware of it and you know what's bad, there's just the constant feedback will always kind of teach them, what's good.
Yeah, I used to love jumping off things, so I kind of made my kids do
Me
that.
too,
right?
yeah.
Started with little blocks, and then they jump off the couch, and then it's like,
Yeah.
jump off the chair.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, mom's not around, jump off the counter.
Exactly.
Maybe we need to bring that back because my kids jump pretty well. And it's because of games and stuff. So I look at
Competition.
we were talking about like lucky enough, right? I didn't have any catastrophic knee injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Typical ankle sprain soccer players, right? Most really were getting tackled and not moving quick enough to avoid the tackle. Kind of my fault. I'll take my own responsibility for that. But one thing I was lucky enough to have growing up was parents that put me in all sorts of stuff. I always kind of laugh, like I was in a bowling league,
Nice.
right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I was actually like, I remember I was 9 years old and I
Yeah.
bowled like a 155. Like
Nice.
thought it was
Yeah.
9 years old.
Right.
But if you watch bowling, think about 9-year-old, that front supported leg, backswing behind, throwing a 10-pound ball accurately.
Mm-hmm. Very dynamic.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff to bowling.
Yeah.
Got into martial arts, which I think a lot of that knee out position, I think about the stances of martial arts. So if you want your kid to be well-rounded, there's lots of sport. Get them in everything.
Yeah.
I have a gym and I have to like cover a lot of those movements. We brought those things in.
Right.
But it's like, it'd be better if they were bowling more often. Better if they were doing some martial arts, and doing that type of stuff. So hopefully my facility changes. That's my goal, right? Is as these clubs get more specialized, we're seeing the movement back to multi sports, bringing it in. Some of the things that we're trying to do of bringing in the martial arts, the jiu-jitsu, the body awareness, right? All that type of stuff. And so I think it's great because I had an opportunity this past summer to go to China for 6 weeks. Awesome. And work with their younger I guess it's not really their national team because their whole swim program is state run. But it was their top swimmers from like 13 years old to like 15 or 16.
That's awesome.
And they spend 4 or 5 hours a day in the pool, right? And then they brought me out there because I was working with some of their older swimmers here in the stateside that go and do some training over at the Nadadors here in Mission Viejo. And so I got invited out there. But instantly I was like, oh, over specialized. I had about 100 kids for like 6 weeks. So one of the first drills I did, they had this huge, facilities were phenomenal.
Sure. Can't, unmatched.
I mean, it's like, it's an Olympic training center. You roll into this center on a bus every day and it's like Olympic rings. It's like, wow, right? Cafeteria, they eat, sleep, train. They're professional athletes. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Right. And then to get to our facility upstairs in this open, big room, you go by like this Taekwondo team. Right? And they had all sorts of sports on this facility, gymnastics, all these types of things. And these kids couldn't do anything but swim. Right? I had some got some access to some balls, and I just wanted them to throw it because I wanted to play dodgeball with them. I wanted to end each session with a game, and quickly found out I wasn't going to be able to do that because they couldn't throw. They had no idea how. But they learned pretty quick. So they had some of the movement patterns were there. It's like, hey, sure them up, and they're wondering why their starts were slow, right? And they're off the blocks and their turns were slow, and quickly found out they couldn't squat. Reaction time, it's like you're in a zero gravity environment of a pool. What are you pushing against?
Right.
Right? And they don't do any running, jumping. They hardly do any of that type of stuff. And so it kind of reassured my mind that they needed to do other stuff. And our athletes at home were like, we're going to that. When I say home, right here in the greatest country in the world.
Sure.
We're going towards this model, I think, of being overly specialized.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute, we see it.
Right.
They're going back to a more multi-sport approach, which was neat because they had some boxing next door to where ours, and got to know some of the boxing coaches. And what was cool is they had an archery team. So some of the archers were doing some of the warm-ups with the boxers.
Yeah.
So they get it.
Yeah.
So it's coming. But that over-specialization, right, it seems so detrimental, right? Because those movement patterns, like we lose the basics because we stick to. Everybody thinks soccer players are so athletic. It's like, well, a lot of my high-end Division I bound kids like don't throw a ball very well. Right. Can't do like a martial arts kick. Can't do a front roll.
Right.
All these types of things, and it's no wonder they're kind of getting hurt on the field.
Yeah.
But
like the best wide receivers are the best basketball players because they're always cutting, they're always kind of moving around.
Got to jump up.
Got to jump. Yeah. It's interesting. They all play basketball first, and it's one of those things that they just like, oh, I can catch a ball too.
Yeah.
I can move. I can do all this stuff, and so you just kind of move around. You kind of do everything that you're doing, and you kind of you figure it out once you kind of are there.
Yeah, very cool. 7. So what's the first sport you're gonna get your kids into?
So my son, we kind of dabbled him into a little bit of basketball and football.
Okay.
Just to kind of see him move around a little bit.
Yeah.
He's doing the drums right now.
Right on. There you go. Yeah.
My daughter's
I
doing.
refuse to do a drum set. That's a brave man, dude.
Yeah, stick him in the garage.
Okay. Lock those doors.
My daughter's doing guitar and gymnastics. Yeah, she does gymnastics on her own, so we kind of like.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Put her body weight into it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you got a little one coming here pretty soon.
Little one coming, yeah, June 1st.
You're talking about your wife a little bit because she's also a DPT.
Yep.
Right, and she works with kids. You want to talk about her for a
Sure,
little bit?
yeah. My wife's, she's amazing.
I'm going to give you this opportunity to get some brownie points
yeah,
if
exactly.
she listens.
Thank you.
So here we go.
She's the best. I mean, she obviously, around with the kids, I'm trying to kind of make the whole business thing work. And she's actually a pediatric physical therapist, so she specializes in 0 to 2-year-olds. And now she worked at Children's Hospital for about 11 years, and she specialized in 0 to 2-year-olds over there. And now she's teaching at Azusa Pacific University Pediatrics. And she's kind of the one that kind of holds the glue together at home and with the business, and does a lot of administration stuff for us. And she, she's the best.
Yeah. Well, second. My wife's probably the best. We got to get brownie points to the wives. We might have to
Right.
cut that out, but whatever. So, what kind of let's see here. What kind of advice would you give to coaches? As far as long-term success of their athletes. I think there's a little bit of dilemma with coaches, and maybe this is why we're doing some of this to hopefully get parents to understand the long-term goals. It's a lot of the reason why I'm trying to do this is to keep the long-term goals, up front, so we remember what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm super competitive. Like, I don't like to lose.
Yeah.
And I ran into that trouble with my oldest daughter. Being that parent on the sideline.
Can't be
and
that
so
guy, man.
I was that guy. Now I've hopefully actually the pendulum's probably gone completely the other way, right? But that's probably the right method, at least that I found, because I drove my daughter out of soccer.
Yeah.
Like, she quit, and it was quit because as a parent, of course, we think our kids are the best, and then we work with athletes all the time. Like, I know my kid's good,
Right.
and I know she's super athletic, and but I took the fun out of the game, because of that stuff. And
Yeah.
so, but at the same time, for coaches and parents, maybe this question of what should be the long-term goals. Let's put it through like an 8 to 12-year-old phase.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, early athlete development still, right? I mean, still pretty young. What should coaches and parents kind of keep in mind as they watch their kids or support their kids?
So coming from like a rehab perspective, and as a parent perspective, we gotta allow our kids to develop. And I think what ends up being the problem is, and I'm guilty of this as well, is like, we're like, okay, we got to get in there. You got to go play, make sure you score the goals, all of these things. But, where is the preparation for that? Where is the warm up? I think we don't emphasize the prehab stuff enough, to where do kids that didn't go through our program that we just did today, what are they doing before they're going out and playing? And I think most people kind of just, our kids are healthy, they're young. They kind of always give that kind of 2 cents of like, my kid's 10 years old, he has no injuries, why does he need to do a warm-up? Well, what do we know through research and science? If mechanics aren't stressed early and muscles aren't activated on before they go out and compete, who's to say that it's ever going to turn on through that whole process of practice? They're just turning on one specific group of muscles and not turning on anything else, because that's how they've been trained. Which is why we really incorporate band work and jumping and landing and all that stuff, because where else are they going to get that? They're not going to get that anywhere else. And I think what are we doing as coaches? What are we doing as parents? Like, can parents say anything, to their coach and be like, hey, what's our warm up today? Or, what are we doing to activate the glutes to help prevent our knees from collapsing in? I know it's hard for parents to say that, but if you're aware of it and you've seen it with your older kids, why wouldn't it be beneficial for the younger kids? And I think that's kind of that's kind of been forgotten. This is why I kind of want to coach my kids' teams, because I want to implement all these things, because no one's doing it. Like, I'm out there, we have football practice, and I'm on the sideline teaching my kid how to like run and do all this stuff, and everyone else is just like, throwing the ball around. Yeah, that's great, but like, where is the activation? Where is the muscle engagement in all of this? And granted, they're younger kids and they may not know how to do it correctly, but why is that the case? Like, why don't they know how to do it correctly? Like, is it just a society norm that they don't have to do that until they're in high school or in 8th grade? Like, there's no reason that a 7-year-old shouldn't be doing some type of mechanical work.
That would probably go into a rabbit hole that I don't really want to go into, but I do. But I don't know how much time we have as far as this idea of, doing the small things, right? Which is our investment in our future. Because in some ways I get it as a parent. It's like, my kid doesn't really need to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
They can go out there and probably perform pretty well and not get hurt and be all right.
Yeah.
But they're not learning as much as they could be if they did have that. Hey, this is how you prep for something. This is how you execute something. This is how you perform, rather than just like, oh, go perform. Everything's just about performing, right? And I think it's little things like that where, we lost track of the basics, because we want to go straight to like the wins and losses,
Right.
And that's a thing too, right? Where I see on Instagram all the time, I'll see a picture of a team and I'll see the score, like, good job, you won 1-0. It's like, where's the story? Like, what do you mean you won 1-0? Like, who'd you play?
Yeah.
How did they actually play? A lot of teams that when they come in the gym here, it's like, I always ask them like, hey, how'd the game go over the weekend? And they know now, like, I don't care about the score. Like, how'd the team play? How did we do? Like, did we go down early? And were we able to battle back? And why were we battling back? How'd the last 15 minutes go? Because that's a lot of times that's what we talk about for soccer. Right? Is that last 15 minutes when the other team's fading, how we doing?
Right.
And all those types of things. And it's I think we hear a lot of time kids nobody likes to be told what to do.
Right.
And so I've taken that to heart as a coach, right? Because I don't want to tell my athletes to do anything, right? I want to teach them why they should do everything, right? So that'll be the big part too, right? When you start coaching your kids, that's at least that's where, if I give you any little advice, that's gamify it, right? Tell them the why,
Competition.
and let them compete in the warm up.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I did with that one of the groups earlier. Is like, hey, who's doing this the best? I'm gonna judge who's doing this the best. Right. You can make a warm up competitive. It's not always this score of this game, right?
But I mean, you think about it, like LeBron James spends $1.2 million on his body, right? Who's to say that you can't do that at a younger age? Just because he's older, he's doing that? No, he's trying to make his career last the longest.
Yeah, right? Most parents are gonna be like, I don't have $1.2 million to spend, but I know where you're going, right? Because what do we do have? Time.
We have time. We have resources.
Yep.
We have tech. I mean, so much social media out there, and not to say that everything's wrong, but there's so much stuff online now that you can just go YouTube like a warm up, and that's better than nothing.
It's probably pretty good. A lot more. I tell you, man, kids have access to so much good training now.
Yeah, better than we've ever had.
So much good. And I see that too. The athletes, they're better athletes than I was at that age, or they're better skilled players. Let me rephrase that, because I don't think they're better athletes.
Right.
I think I don't.
Right.
I'll be bold. I don't think they're better athletes. Which is maybe why we're seeing so many injuries at the college levels.
Or even at the younger levels.
At the younger levels, because
we're seeing
well-rounded.
ACL tears at 10 years old now. Why is that? Is that because they're specializing in sports too early? Are they not doing, again, like you said, like probably my kid's not going to get hurt. But
I
probably.
think, 10-year-old, I think what it is they're going 100 miles an hour game speed, right, with no foundation.
Right.
No foundation. Bottom line, it's like.
But where do they get that foundation from?
Yeah, because they're not doing the basics, like you said. It's the classic, like, let's just play the game,
right,
and then play faster, right. Hey, tackle harder. They don't know how to do any of this stuff really, or have that foundation, So that's like little things, like what could we do better? I try to get my kids on a bike. Like I said, I want my kids to ride to school, because that's 2.5 miles of on the bike pedaling every day, a little bit of balance, right? A little bit of slope and hills for a second grader. I'm thinking like that one hill that we climb probably looks gigantic, because I remember hills when I was a kid, and then in Hawaii a little bit, got to go back to Hawaii a couple of years ago with the wife and visited the old neighborhood, and I was like, I remember that hill being a lot bigger.
Right.
Classic, right, as a kid.
Yeah.
Put them on a hill, put them on a bike.
Exactly.
Have them go explore that.
Well, I mean, it's no different than any other profession. Like, why treat the kids differently in sports versus you would treat the kids in singing? When they sing, they have to warm up. They have to train their vocal cords, like how to get going for that performance that they're going to have at night. They don't just go and on stage and they're just blasting a great, tune out.
Right.
It's all a preparation. But why does that change for athletics? Every other profession has the basics set down. The foundation is put in.
Absolutely. You're going to perform better if you have a good dynamic, if you have a good warm-up, good routine, right? You get the system primed and pumped and everything moving. And you're clearly, right? It just makes common sense, like you're less likely to get hurt. if you warm up. I think that's probably a good place maybe that we kind of wrap up, because episode 2, I doubt anybody got this far into the episode of listening to us.
We could talk
but
forever,
maybe
yeah.
We'll just keep chatting, because who cares. But I used to joke around, I was in law enforcement, that I was always patrol ready, is what we joked around, right? Like I might be sitting in a patrol car for hours and then have to go run up a flight of stairs and do something for somebody, right? But it wasn't, and so here's the thing too, right, is to go on your point, it wasn't that I wasn't warmed up. In that moment, I don't have a sports, like, hey, my game starts at 5:15 and have this type of stuff. But, I got to work early, worked out, stretched, took care of my body, tried to eat right. Because my patrol ready wasn't that I could perform and try to answer any call or task that I had to do as a police officer. Whether it was, like I said, running into a building that might be on fire, or going to a car accident and have to do that type of stuff, or, I guess we like chasing bad guys, but you hope that guy runs and like you have to go chase after him. But I didn't want to pull up with a hamstring or be the guy on the radio nobody could understand because I was sucking wind so much, right? And so like it's funny because I have this patrol ready and this joke in the gym that's like, I'm always ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm always ready to go. Why? Because when I woke up, I try to get my kids and my athletes to do this too. It's like, because I woke up, I made my bed, right? It's big for my athletes. Like, make your bed, show your parents you appreciate them, and then like do some push-ups, right? Get primed and pumped. And so, obviously, if I'm doing a certain workout, I need to do more warming up, but try to stay in that mode all the time, right? So maybe that's a good thing that we could tell everybody is like, hey, just take everything. Everything you're doing is part of your warm up. Like, go do stuff more. Everything has a purpose. Your kid loves playing video games. Like, let him play video games, but put a timer on or put something on. He's playing Fortnite. I don't know if that's still big, but it's like, what's cool about that game is not very long, right? I think it's only like 10, 15 minutes. It's like, okay, when you die or you're out, let's get some lunges in. Let's get some squats in. Let's do some band work. Put that band on.
Just go outside. Just go out and play, like.
We used to time ourselves of how long it would take to run around the house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it was like, your neighbor was cool. So it's like you ran around your house, jumped over the neighbor's fence, ran through their yard, came back. Like, we used to time ourselves on that. I wish I would see kids do that again. But maybe we could bring that back. Yeah. We'll have a, yard jumping kids running amok here in Southern California. Because the parents live, they go, jump everyone's backyard. So, Dr. Drew, thank you for coming on, and I think hopefully we'll make this somewhat regular, right?
Yeah,
because I think it's going to be good. As some of our goals is to bring on coaches and athletes and that type of stuff, but then to bring it back and give a lot of these knowledge bombs, and we're going to follow up too with some specifics, right? We're putting down this program on videos and that type of stuff, so we'll have everybody have access to that. And it's good for parents too. Like, run through these drills with your kids. You want to get active again, because as a parent, right, it's hard to stay active sometimes, and so you want a way to get back physically active. Do the warm up with your kids,
right?
Model for them. Let them teach you.
How to do it.
Because they'll love that. That was
telling their parents what to do.
That was my tell the parents what to do, right? And an aha moment too, right? That as a parent, that you respect your kid enough that they have something they could teach you.
Right.
I think there might be something powerful there too as well. So let's go. So Dr. Drew, you can be found at modusspecialists.com is your website for your PT clinic, and some good information on there, and you've got some good stuff going with USA Water Polo, right? Coming up.
We're an official partner with them, so we see all their senior level teams getting ready for the Olympics.
They don't have any shoulder problems or anything. Water polo, right? They're good to go. So that's gonna be awesome. So Modus Specialists. So there's 3 S's in that, 4 S's. Find them. Make sure they're all in there.
2 S's in the middle and then S at the end. Modus.
STS. You can also be found at Instagram and Facebook at Modus Specialists. Ends with an S. Right. So check them out there.
Modus is Latin for movement.
Right.
So where the name came from, and so we're movement specialists. That's where the idea came from for the name.
Which I love, by the way. Love movement. We love it. So thank you. I think that is it. So
thank you.
Everybody go out and move more and be more
keep
awesome.
Moving.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Mission Strong podcast. If you'd like to know more about Dr. Drew Morcos, what he does, and his practice, you can find links to his practice, website, and social media in the description of this podcast or this video if you're watching on YouTube. On behalf of Justin and myself, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Mission Strong podcast, and we hope that the content we provide helps you or your athletes become better, faster, stronger, all those fun things. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, take care.